Welcome to the Lou&Sue podcast,
where we chat about life, love, and what we've learned.
So grab your cutest mug
and join us.
Hi. Welcome to the Lou&Sue podcast. We want to do a different segment once in a while here and there. We like to read books, and the ones that are standing out to us a lot, we want to do a bit of a review. So we're gonna
and what we've learned from it.
What stood out to us,
how it helped us grow.
Yes.
And
why we suggest it for you if you're interested in it.
I
think we're gonna call it the Lou&Sue book club.
Like the Oprah book club.
The Oprah.
Except way less people in this club.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just the two of us. So today,
we're
talking about Mel Robbins' Let Them. This was a life-changing book for me. This is massive. Yeah. I already liked Mel Robbins. I think I read the 5-second rule book, and I've listened to a couple of her different podcasts and stuff like that. But I like the way she takes all these scientific things and everything that she gets from other people and just dumbs it down to a point where it's so easy to understand.
She says that this book actually stemmed from a podcast she did. Yeah. And then it ended up blowing up, and it created even a trend of people getting the Let Them tattoos.
Yeah.
And I might get one now, actually. Jump right on that trend. But yeah, today's episode is Let It Be. Let them, let me.
Yeah.
Let it be. But yeah, it was good. You know what I found when I read the book is there was parts of it that I could relate to every single podcast we've done so far too.
That's true.
There was the beginning of the book, the first half of the book is the let them theory, which talks about that you can't control other people. It's pretty, when you think about it, the information is it's kind of obvious,
Yeah.
And it's nothing new, really. It's just the way that she explains it is so much more cut and dry and easy to understand, like you said, dumbing it down. And then the second half of the book is the let me portion, which is what you can really only ever control yourself and what you can do in situations. So
it's how to apply it. I think that's my favorite part. She says it all the time. I'm not saying this is going to be easy.
Yeah.
It's simple. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But here are some tools on how to apply it.
Yeah.
Here are some examples. And I think that's what I love about Mel so much is she's even when she says it's not letting it go. It's not the same thing at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people assume.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just can't let it go. And that's okay. You don't have to let it go. But it's let them be who they are. And then let me choose what I want to do.
How I react.
I react. And
those cats need to let each other right now because they're fighting like crazy. She said when we try to just let it go, it feels unresolved. Yeah. And I think every woman out there can relate to this. Like when and we talked about this before, when you argue, and then you sort of let it go. And the next day your husband or your spouse or your boyfriend, whatever, thinks that it's over. But to us, it feels unresolved because we haven't really talked it all the way through. So that's not what she's talking about. She's
exactly
talking about letting them be who they are, so that you can also, there's freedom in it.
Yeah, there's a lot of freedom. If you can really just let people be them and then not worry so much about their emotions and their reactions and all of those things, it's just, like she said, just focus on yourself and be the best version of you that you can be and stop giving any power to worrying about other people and worrying about what they're going to think and how they're going to react. We wrote down a few quotes that really stood out to us. What are you looking for?
My phone.
Oh, I don't know.
It was on my phone. You have it there though, right?
I don't know. Anyways, we'll figure out what we're trying to say. My first one that really stood out to me, and this is reality for me. Suffering comes from resisting reality. The pain you feel often stems from wishing things were different than they are. And I think this might have been a Buddhist thing that she was quoting, but it's true because we get disappointed and I think we've definitely talked about this before, is her and I are so similar. We react very similarly to things. We think very similarly. So we get really frustrated where it's like, how can you not think like that? Yeah. Why do you think like that? So then we get so frustrated.
It's by our expectations are letting us down rather than just letting people be who they are.
Yeah.
And not expecting more from them. People can only ever...
Yeah, people can only meet you as far as they meet themselves. Yeah. And that is true. And
that's huge.
Another thing, and they all tie in together. It's so beautiful. But they're talking about everyone is 8 years old in a big body. Like, emotional maturity takes time, practice, and most importantly, it takes a desire to want to learn. And just because we're naturally always wanting to change and grow and better ourselves and all of these things does not mean other people are. And I am very, very grateful to have a friend that we're both going through the same thing. It makes it so much easier to...
We relate to each other.
We relate to each other, and we're constantly, like, we've been friends for 10 years. We've been close for maybe less than 10 years. But either way, like, we're on this growth together, which most people don't get that.
She talks about that in the book, too, where with friendships, where it's... the things that cause you to be close to each other and how many hours you actually have to spend with somebody to be close to that person. It's something like, it's over 200 hours.
Yeah.
But to be actually a close friend with somebody. Yeah. And just how difficult that is in an adult life when you work 40 hours a week. It's incredibly hard to be close to somebody. And then there's your proximity and whether or not you're in the same city or not. And all of those things play into that. But yeah, she talks about how if you're in an argument with somebody and they're not meeting where you're at, you have to remember or picture them as an 8-year-old child that you're talking to, and realize that some people emotionally are only ever going to get to that level and they're going to throw tantrums, and you have to let them. And
it's not, looking down at anybody. It's natural to not know how to process your emotions. And she goes way more in depth of this. I'm not going to basically
read the book.
We're not going to retell you everything in the book, but she talks about why we all naturally are 8-year-olds emotionally. And it totally makes sense. And it absolutely makes sense. And I'm going to ask you, because you're a parent, did it change how you feel about how you parented?
Yeah, I'll tell the story now. Okay. When I went to my daughter's first parent-teacher interview when she was in kindergarten. So she would have been, 5, I guess?
Yeah.
And the teacher said, she's wonderful. We're not supposed to have favorites, but she's just an awesome kid. And I'm going, yeah, I know, she's mine. And and he said, but there's one issue, and I'm bracing myself. And he says, she's a mother hen. She's parenting all the kids. She thinks she's the teacher. She's correcting them. And I'm sitting back going, yeah.
Okay, I know where
she gets that from me. Yeah. And Lou bought me a sweater once that said, what is it? I'm not bossy. I'm aggressively helpful. And I realized that I am a massive control freak. And it's really hard for me to let people it's hard for me to let people fall.
Yeah.
Even though obviously I mess up too, but if I can see that you're falling and you're about to mess up and you're going to cause yourself trouble or you're doing something the wrong way, I just want to jump in there. I remember baking with my mom as a kid, and this is probably partially where it comes from. My mother would hover, right? And if I was measuring something wrong, and my mom will not cook a recipe without measuring it to the, and she was really very like, no, that's not how you do it, in a kind way. And then I sort of naturally developed that as well. And I can see that in my daughter. So yeah, it definitely, I have realized that naturally before I read this book, slowly over time. She's now 17 and I have to let her learn. The other day she was driving and she's like, Mama, I almost rear-ended somebody. The roads were slippery and I slammed the brakes on, and I was like, oh, I forgot to tell you, you don't slam the brakes on, you pump the brakes.
Yeah.
I have to let her. And sometimes it might mean that she's going to get into an accident. Obviously, if I had a thought of that, I would have told her. I'm not going to omit information and hope she learns the hard way. But sometimes you do have to let your children learn. But had you even
told her, she's probably still would have had to go through that for it to actually register.
You have to experience it. Yeah. Experience is how we grow, for sure. But yeah, and you wanted me to tell the story about how So I'm the youngest of 4.
Just talking about this is like her generation of
my mother loves this story. This is like her favorite story. It really expresses who I am as a person and have always been. I was probably like 7 years old, and it was the summertime, and we used to put the tent in the yard and we would sleep in it overnight. And this one particular night, I was sleeping in it alone, which shocks me that I was that confident. But anyway, prior to that, my neighbors, there was 3 little girls that lived next door to me, and I didn't like how their parents parented them. And I told them, you guys should pack your bags and run away. And I could be your parent. We could go live down by the river.
This is a 7-year-old telling these kids this.
The river was probably, I don't know, like a quarter of a kilometer away. And I was telling them, we'll have a water source there. I'm amazed at myself for coming up with this plan. But in my head, I'm thinking, there's no way they're not actually going to do it. I was a very daydreamy kind of kid. And anyway, so it's probably 3, 4 in the morning, and I'm sleeping in the tent, and the girls come up to the tent and unzip the thing, and they're like, we're ready to go. And they had suitcases backed up. Yeah. And I was like, oh, and I'm half asleep, right? And I'm like, oh, I didn't mean right now, maybe tomorrow. Went back. I don't even know if they ever got caught. I feel so bad now. Anyway,
you were 7 years old.
There was nothing wrong with their parents, looking back, but for whatever reason, I thought I could do a better job. But the control freak in me is a strong character trait I have. So,
do you think it has anything to do with growing up with brothers, and then you had these girls next door that you felt like you got to mother?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I'm wondering now. It's just her mothering personality. I appreciated that. If you watch the episodes that we recorded when we were in PI, I like having her as a mother. It works.
I don't think at your core you're ever really going to change who you are, but you can dull it down a little bit if it's kind of,
you can let them.
Yeah.
You can let them learn their own lessons.
And I can let me learn to be a little bit more, let them do it their own way. There's nothing wrong with it.
So here's another quote that ties in. Helping other people does not mean solving their problems. It means giving them the space to do it themselves.
Oh, that's good.
So you be supportive, but you don't have to be the hero.
Yeah.
You don't have to rescue them. And we want to.
Yeah.
We want to make things easier, but it actually makes it harder because it just prolongs the lessons that they're going to learn.
Yeah. I have that people need to feel in control. And when you push them to change, they push back, and it creates resistance, even if you have good intentions.
Yeah, because if you think about somebody telling you what to do, you're going to be taken aback, and you're going to be like, well,
what did you just say to me earlier?
I've learned that I don't take unsolicited advice very well.
Yeah.
I don't say anything, and it's okay, and I will try to digest it and see if there's anything to it, but
you take advice well, though.
I take advice. If I ask for advice, I'm asking for a reason, and I'm very open to it. But when I'm already proud of how things are going, and I'm already happy about stuff, and then I get some kind of unsolicited advice that I'm just like, I feel like that's out of nowhere. And
you obviously don't see a problem, though, right?
And I don't see a problem. So for me, it's like, okay, what are you projecting from yourself onto me right now? And I don't feel, I'm not a therapist. I don't feel like dealing with that.
But I think the good thing is you will step away from it. So even if it's unsolicited, you'll step away from it and you'll process it, and you'll probably reflect on that and I think I'm similar to that. I may not react well in the moment, but that's always going to be there replaying in my head. It
depends who it's coming from.
Yeah.
Most of the time I can, just step back and be like, okay. And then stop. Like me just saying okay is like, I'm stopping this conversation. We're not going to keep going any further. But yeah.
I think even if it was not somebody I respected, it would still stick with me. I think I'm not as good at letting them have their own opinions.
Yeah. And no, it still takes me a while to not be offended, or not offended, but not be affected by it. But I also know that that's me and my response to it, and that doesn't need to go on the other person either.
Well, that's what she says when she says "let me." It's she says when you say "let me," it shows that that you can control self-awareness and compassion, not judgment. Hi, Kitty.
If you're not watching on YouTube, I don't know what's wrong. Yeah. We have our cute visitor again.
I know, if you're not watching the visual, if you're not watching the podcast, if you're just listening to it, you're really missing out on a very aesthetic cat who's very loving and wants to be in every episode.
But you can't see him.
Oh yeah, he's not. Okay, there we go.
Here he is.
Yeah, so she breaks down a lot of things and gives you tools, actual tools for getting through situations. And one of the examples she uses, I believe in the book, is one of her friend's husbands. She wanted him to get healthy, eat healthy, exercise, all that stuff. And she basically broke down, like, instead of the girl telling her husband, look, you need to get healthy, you need to go work out, like, the husband wasn't going to do it because he's being told to. He had to want to do it. And so she goes through, basically you have to, it's the ABCs, right? You apologize, you back off, and I forget what C is, but you congratulate them when you see them actually making the change. But a big part of it too was modeling the change. So if you're married or you have a boyfriend or girlfriend and you want them to, I don't know, walk more or go to the gym more or whatever, if you're not doing it yourself.
Yeah, she says, so do it, but then also show the benefits to it. Like, it's not about them seeing you losing weight over time. It's, I feel so good. Oh, that walk was wonderful. And just constantly having a positive.
Making it look like it's fun.
Making it look like it's fun. Making it look appealing.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of her thing first. It's we can't control and make anybody else do what we want them to do. But we can try to, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like demonstrate
it, but like, oh my goodness.
Emulate?
Yeah. Inspire. There you go. It took a little while, but it got there. We can inspire them. And it doesn't mean that it's going to work. And that was what she was saying about, like, the long run. Give it at least 6 months for it to kind of click. But then she said the ABC thing too, where it's like apologize and ask open-ended questions. Yeah. And she said too, it might not go well, and that's okay. But if you get them thinking about it, then it's got to be their idea. Yeah.
So she goes into the 3 steps, and I'm going to mention it because it's in here. So number 1 is adults only change what they want to change.
Yeah.
Number 2 is humans are hardwired to do what feels good now and not in the long term. And that's actually where I had, so she talks about the 5 resets. So I'm just going to go with it. The 5 resets book, to me, I got more out of, and I don't even know the author's name right off the top of my head. But anyway.
I know why. Sorry, I don't have that. I have that in audiobook format. I don't have the actual book.
She refers to this book. Mel Robbins does. And we had talked about how come we can't just make change because for the strict reason that it's beneficial to us. Like, I feel better.
Why isn't that a good enough
incentive or motivator to change? And in the 5 resets, she talks about how you can't actually change unless you change the neural pathways. So it's not good enough to just have willpower and want to and have it feel good. Unless you do something consistently over a long period of time, it's not going to change those neural pathways, and it's not going to be that brushing your teeth moment of like, I just do it. It feels good. It's automatic. It's good for me, but it's because I've been doing it since I was a kid. So it's easy for me. And then the third thing is every single person on this earth thinks that they are the exception.
Yeah.
So that
was a big one for me too.
Whether it's that I can drink whatever I want, I'm never going to be an alcoholic. I can smoke cigarettes, I'm not going to get lung cancer. Everybody thinks that they're the one person that it's not going to affect. So therefore, that being enough incentive for them to change the behavior isn't there because they don't think they're going to be the one that suffers those repercussions of that action. So
for me, it was where she ended at the end of that, like, I think the exception to warnings and ultimatums. And to me, that hit hard because I always got frustrated with, I mean, if you've listened, you know that I'm newly separated. About 5 or 6 months before we actually, like, newly got into the big problem of where I ended up leaving, I told him that these things need to change or this isn't working for me anymore. And it was my ultimatum. Like I very much told him, this is where we're at. This is important. This is whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. And then the 5 or 6 months later, he said, I didn't realize it was as bad again, which was the same words as he said in the first place. So mm-hmm. it's the same thing. He thought he was the exception mm-hmm. and he didn't, not that he didn't believe me, but he didn't believe the situation mm-hmm. was an ultimatum in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that hit me. And I'm like, okay, well, just like most of us, we don't think that it actually really applies to us.
Yeah. And I mean, again, he had to want to change.
He had to want to change.
So, and she talks about that too, where you get to the point where, and then, so if you've yes. modeled the behavior and you've done the ABCs and you've realized that you have to let them, you have to set a time frame, like you said, like the mm-hmm. 6 months or whatever. And then you have to decide, is it a deal breaker for me or is it a preference? And in her example, the woman absolutely loved her husband, and whether or not he actually put those changes in, she decided she loved him. She was going to stay regardless mm-hmm. of whether or not he improved his health. Mm-hmm. As a woman, I can relate to this 100%. And for me, it's like, it's not that we want to belittle these people or these men, or, you know, the reason we want the change is because we want to have a healthier, longer life with the person we love. Yeah. So, but your spouse doesn't necessarily read it that way. And if they're happy with who they are, they're not going to change. Mm-hmm. So you have to either accept it or move on, one or the other.
Yeah. And that's what she said. Like, you have to, something's going to give. You either have to stop complaining mm-hmm. or you have to make the decision and leave.
Yeah. Because really at the end of the day, if you're complaining constantly, you change this, you change that.
It's not good for anybody.
You're not happy. He's not happy, and ain't nobody happy. So,
and that's not going to incite change. He's not going to change that way.
That's right. Yeah. And at the end of the day, too, especially if you married somebody and that's how they were when you married them. Yeah. You accepted that. You have to accept somebody where they're at, and mm-hmm. don't marry somebody expecting change. We've talked mm-hmm. about that before. Don't marry potential. A lot of us are guilty
of that. Of seeing the potential. But the other mm-hmm. thing too is just seeing, it's just our expectations. Again, mm-hmm. the expectations we have. So the red flags that we kind of justify and all of those things, like mm-hmm. everything kind of ties in together, mm-hmm. but have the emotional maturity enough to take a step back and actually look at it, be like, okay, never mind the feelings I'm having. Mm-hmm. What is it about this person that I love, and what is it about this person that I don't love so much? Yeah. So she was talking about 80-20 rule. Mm-hmm. So if the 80% is wonderful,
it's good, yeah.
They're there for you, they respect you, they're loyal, they're whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And the 20% is what's annoying. Mm-hmm. It's 20%.
Yeah.
Can you live with that?
Yeah.
Or
is that 20% like the deal breaker?
But is it a deal breaker? Because mm-hmm. it can be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
But she was talking about sometimes people will focus on that 20% so much. Mm. Like, so my example wasn't in my relationship. My example was for work, that I kind of started doing that. I took a step back and I thought about it. And I'm like, yeah, the 20% is really annoying, mm-hmm. but it's 20%.
Yeah.
So let's kind of reevaluate and kind of, again, let the stuff that doesn't actually affect me mm-hmm. not affect me.
Yeah. And one of the things we talked about too, when we first were getting started today, was both of us are sort of in that time of trying to be less reactive and give things more time and space before mm-hmm. we react to them. So mm-hmm. if you get a text message, let's say, and you're really, really upset about it for whatever reason, rather than immediately responding, mm-hmm. taking time to even sleep on it. Mm-hmm. And I said to Lou, like, maybe if you would normally respond, within 24 hours and it's not good, maybe you give it 3 days, and it's better to give it time and have them be upset that you haven't responded right away, mm-hmm. and think about your response, and then think about the outcome of that response. And if the person isn't going to respond well, are you going to be okay with that?
Yeah.
Like, it's, we talked about, my brother and I have gotten into an argument. I guess it was like back in September. He's living with my mother and not working right now. And I don't like that. I think that he is perfectly capable of working, and I wish that he would get out of the that small space that he's in, that sort of cocoon he's built for himself, because I don't think that it's mentally healthy or emotionally healthy mm-hmm. for him either. It's not just about providing, it's about him being in a good space. And I feel like if he would go and be around other people and get out, he'd feel better, and it would just be, but that's me, right? And I can't control what he does, and I have to let him do what he wants. And honestly, my mother's a grown woman, and if she's not comfortable with it, she has a voice too. But I was very vocal, and I did tell him how I felt, and he hasn't spoken to me since. And I feel like I was stern but not mean, I guess, when I told him. And my mother wants me to reach out and go for coffee. But the thing is that I think that if he was going to go for coffee with me, he would be expecting an apology. And I can't take back what I said because I truly believed it. And it took a long time for me to actually get to that point where I was able to say how I felt. So I think sometimes, even when it's family, it's really hard. Like, letting go of the dream of what you wished it would be. For me, I wish my family was closer. I wish that we had get-togethers regularly. I wish that Christmas was this big, wonderful family event. And it's just that's not the way that my life went, or the way that my family is. And I have to let go of that dream. And embrace the reality of that. Now I have a husband and a daughter, and this is my family. And if my extended family wants to be a part of my life, then they can be. But if they don't want to be, that's okay too.
I think it's harder with family because they're blood, right? So they've been obviously with you your whole life. You've expected certain things from other people because this is how you grew up, and this is the dynamic you had with your family. And I think it's harder for me, like for my parent, it's harder for me to feel like I can say something to my parent in a way that's not gonna sound condescending or sound like I think I know better. I don't know. It's difficult. Too, like the dynamics are very different. I'm an adult now, so for me, be as an adult, the dynamic is gonna be different. Like I want a friendship. That's great, but I'm still.
You have to have healthy boundaries too, though.
The parent to child is still in effect.
That's right. Yeah. It's a really tricky thing, and everybody has to be on the same page with it. And that's the problem, is that maybe they're not. And you have to let them be where they're at. And it's a hard dream to let go of when you want to have a close family, I think the thing is that your family thinks that they know what's best for you because they've known you your whole life. And the truth is they may not. They might not know what's best for you, especially once you're older and you move out and your lives are going in sort of separate pathways. That has to shift. And instead of it being parental advice, it's more like friendship advice. And my brother had expectations for me that I didn't meet. He wanted me to go to university, and I didn't. I went to college. And I don't understand why he's upset about that, because for me, I've had a career for 23 years that I love. So why is that let down? And so, but he had expectations for me that he's not willing to let go of.
So I think for everybody, but I think family, especially when Mel talks about frame of reference, that's super important. Because it also helps us be more empathetic. Just try to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, exactly.
And so for me, a lot of the book that I love the most was things that I realized I was kind of already doing. I didn't know like the term frame of reference, but I do that a lot. I tend to like to see all sides as much as I can. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, where does that come from? Why do you feel like that? Why do you do that? So I already do that as much as I, think of doing it. I can do it more, obviously. But there was a lot of talking about the relationship thing, like the ABC thing that Susan was talking about. The asking open-ended questions was part of it too. And it validated that I feel like I did everything that I could have done. I already knew that. I already felt that, but it was just like extra validation. And it was good. It was good to be like, yeah, you do these things, you make your effort, do these things, but then let them be them. And I think my biggest thing and I probably said this before, when I knew that my relationship was over, was that I can't ask him to be somebody different than he is. It's just not fair.
Yeah.
He's not capable. He doesn't have to.
Yeah.
What I want and my expectations are not fair to him. And that's kind of where I ended up leaving it. And because that's what it is. Like I can't expect him to be all of these things.
And some people just don't have the skills to do. Like, I was talking to somebody this week that somebody did something very hurtful to them, and it was years ago now, and they still have never received an apology. And it's something that's so blatantly obvious that there should be at least an apology happening. And this person can't understand why there's been no reaching out, no apology. The thing is that in order to really truly forgive somebody, even when they haven't asked for it, you have to understand the frame of reference. You have to give them the benefit of the doubt. And almost in a sympathetic way, like I feel sorry for this person that they don't have those skills, that they wouldn't even know what to say. And probably because they were never shown that grace. So how can you emulate, here's that word. How can you emulate it if you never saw it, if you never learned it? And again, with the neural pathways, if you didn't grow up in those circumstances and with that being developed in you, it's so much harder to do it as an adult because it's so solidified in you that if you do something wrong and you're not going to apologize and own it, you're probably never going to. Unless it's going to be beneficial for you in some way. Like some people just can't unless they can see it, what's in it for them. Which is sad and unfortunate.
We're naturally all a little bit selfish in that way. But the more you grow, the more you
glow.
The more you see the other effects of things, and the more it's you got to grow up at some point, guys.
And I feel like it feels like a lot of information. So when you read the book, she be thick, okay? It's a big book.
It's a lot.
And I did the audiobook version and you did too. And one of the things I was telling Lou, this is a side note, but the books that we've read this year that I really love, I'm actually buying in hard copy because I want to be able to reference back to them. And this would be right up there with Atomic Habits for me. I just hit my mic, sorry.
It's okay, sorry for the sounds.
The Let Them Theory, Atomic Habits, and for me, the 5 Resets as well is going to be in that list. But there's just so much in it that if you're going to get it and you're an audiobook kind of person, I suggest having a book that you can write in as you're going or putting notes on your phone because there's a lot you're going to reference back to because you're saying things now and I'm like, oh, I forgot about that part. Yeah, that was so good. There's just so much in the book. It's really, really well done.
But even though it's as long as it is, the way she broke it down, like there's 20 chapters. So the first 10, like Susan was saying in the beginning, is really about let them. Understanding the whole concept of it, the science behind it, and all of those things behind it. And then each chapter, she has a recap. Okay, so this is what we've learned. So she makes it easy.
And she uses a lot of her own personal stories as well. They're super relatable.
So it's easy to process. It's easy to retain. And then the second half of the book's like, okay, now that you know all of these things, here's how we're going to apply it. Here's how this is a let me part. So this is the stuff this is where you take control. This is the things of the control of the things that you can control. Basically, these are the things you can do. And again, she's got recaps every chapter. She breaks everything down in like 5 steps or whatever she's doing. And I like the way she does it because as long as the book is, it's actually pretty easy to digest. And I actually read it twice because I knew we're doing a podcast on it. So I wanted to like kind of refresh it. I will read this book again and again and again. Because we need the reminders sometimes of, this might be frustrating. But remember, we have tools. And we have to use the tools. And like anything, it's going to take practice. It's going to take time. And because we're willing, naturally, her and I are willing people, it's great because we can put this into practice.
Being aware enough to go through the steps and to have it in the forefront of your mind rather than in the back so that it's your immediate response to something is let them or let me. We had the situation today of we were supposed to have a third person on the podcast.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, she's not feeling well, and we hope you get better soon. But we have a choice in that moment of, okay, we could be disappointed, or we could have canceled it. Yeah. We could have picked another topic. But instead, my response as soon as you texted me was, okay, well, we have to let her. She's not feeling good. What are you going to do? Yeah. But we already know what we're doing. We're professionals now. Yeah. And so
we're still going to do it.
We've both read the book. Yeah, absolutely. So, and in some ways, then you can also flip that and look at the silver lining in that is that we already know each other. We already have a flow. We already have a system. So this podcast is going to be a little easier to film because there is just the two of us. Yeah. So as much as we really want to be adding other people in, guests, especially if they have something to weigh in on the topic. But yeah, so that helped because in that same situation before reading the book, I think both of us would have dwelled on that a lot longer. Yeah. We would have gotten over it because that's our personalities. But,
same. And again, I still, the point of like, if you're not feeling good, you're not feeling good. There's nothing
about
you
do
that.
About
but I think the disappointment would have been felt longer.
But it was almost like when I came into her apartment, I was like, this is kind of perfect.
Yeah,
this is exactly what we needed.
Right? Quick pause, guys. I'm so sorry. Our microphone stopped working.
Real live, in the moment example of let them and let me. But this was more of a let me, right? It's not her fault. But let me respond to it in a way that's productive and positive rather than ho-hum. And I mean, we were talking the other day at work, this was interesting, about when I was in hairdressing school, we learned that everybody is one of the characters in Winnie the Pooh, their personality. Okay. So you're either Pooh, which he's super friendly, he's very kind, he always sees the silver lining, or you're Tigger and you're just all over the place, super high energy, like kind of irritating. Spending too much time with that person's going to be draining to you. I forget what Piglet was. I'm not familiar enough with the show to know. And then Eeyore. Yeah. And Eeyore is the ho-hum, always sees the negative. And kind of passive aggressive, and he's like everybody's attacking him, like nothing is his fault. He can't own anything. And funny dating story. Can I throw a funny dating story?
Do it up. We like funny stories.
So, when I was dating, there was a guy that I went on a date with, and I was already out with a drink I was out with a friend for a drink, and he texted me, and I was like, hey, you know what? Come down, and you might as well join us. And my friend was okay with it, so he came into the bar, and he was hungry, so he ate. He didn't ask me if I was hungry. He just kind of, and the entire time he was there, every conversation, every topic that came out of his mouth was something very negative. I mean, he talked about suicide on our first date, and I mean, whatever, I guess maybe he felt open enough, and that's good, but it was so draining and so depressing that when he went to the washroom, I got up and paid his bill. The bartender was a friend of mine, so I made sure that he knew what was going on type thing. And when he came back from the washroom, I said, oh, don't worry about it, your bill's paid. I said, I'm gonna walk you to your car. And he said, oh, we're done. And I said, oh yeah, we're done. I said, have you ever watched Winnie the Pooh? And he said, yeah, why? I said, because you're Eeyore. And that's the end of the date. Kind of, I can't be with an Eeyore.
Oh my God, no.
It would drain me. But yeah, it's so it's kind of interesting that everybody is sort of, and then I got thinking, I'm like, I wonder which personality I am, because part of me thinks I'm Tigger, but I'm not that high energy, so.
No, I don't think, you don't drain me.
No?
I don't think you're Tigger.
I think maybe I'm Winnie the Pooh. Or Piglet, but I don't know what Piglet is, I don't know.
We're gonna look into that.
Yeah. Or maybe if you guys know right underneath, what is Piglet's personality? But apparently it is a thing, and that everybody falls into one of those 4 categories. Okay. And knowing that sort of helps you to relate to somebody, and knowing whether or not where they're going to be on that friendship level. Maybe Piglet is like a friend for a good time, not a long time. Maybe that's I don't know. We're gonna have to look that up because now I'm super curious. Yeah. But yeah, the book is really, really good. And you can relate to everything, and it gives you just...
It's so funny because on one hand, I feel like everybody needs to read this. Absolutely everybody needs to read this. I feel like giving this to people specifically, be like, okay, you really need to read this.
Like a housewarming
but
gift.
Then I need to let them read it if they want to.
Let them buy it themselves.
If they don't want to, I can't push it on them.
Yeah.
It's also a passive aggressive way of being like, hey, you need to learn to let people be themselves.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that either, but I still recommend it to everybody. I really do. If you feel like it, go ahead, because
my husband is not into self-help books at all.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to read them. He has no issue, like none. Doesn't want to. My father-in-law was sitting in the kitchen one day when I had the book on, the audio book on while I was doing the dishes, and he was listening to it, and the topic was she was talking about how she was on the airplane and the guy behind her was coughing. And she was getting really irritated and she was upset because obviously he's sick and she didn't want to get sick and all this stuff. And, she turned around and she said, can you please, cover your mouth or whatever? And he said, oh yeah, no problem, sorry. And he continued for the rest of the flight to continue to cough and hack and not cover his mouth. And she had no choice but to let them. And she said, and then the let me part of that is, let me take this scarf and maybe cover my mouth, or, put my headphones on so I can't hear him. And I thought, how many times have I been in the lineup at, the grocery store, and the person behind me is just a little too close, or like snapping gum, or,
something irritating.
And I'm telling you, this can be used not just daily, but probably hourly. Is like, I have to let them
everywhere.
And
really focus on what you can do. She said, she's like, somebody else isn't responsible for me not getting sick.
That's right.
I am responsible for me not getting sick as much as you can control it.
Yeah.
So I have a scarf. I'm going to put that around, and then hopefully that helps enough. And then put the headphones up so I'm not constantly irritated, because how can you not be irritating when somebody's open mouth coughing right behind you?
Yeah, and I mean, then maybe your next flight, then you bring a mask with you because you know that there's potential that somebody's going to be sick beside you, and we can all relate. Nobody wants to get sick. It happens quite often that somebody will come into my barber shop, and I'll be like, "Oh, you don't have to work today," and they're like, "Well, no, my kid's home with the stomach flu," and I'm like, "Why are you here?"
Yeah,
like
that happened a lot when I was a bartender. Oh, well, why are you here today? Oh, they sent me home.
Yeah, but then
why are you
home?
Go home and get better. Don't make me sick. I'm here to work. I'm not here. I don't have a choice but to be here.
And in both of those jobs, like, we don't get paid if we don't work.
No, so we had to be.
If you get me sick, you literally might as well be reaching into my purse, pulling out my wallet, and taking my money from me. Like, it's so, I just don't be a superhero. Like, you don't need a haircut that bad. Wait till you feel better.
But the point is that these are tools. Yeah. To deal with what's going to happen every day. Because there's always going to be people irritating you. There's always going to be people that don't meet your expectations. There's always going to be these situations that you have to deal with it. So having just let it go in concept doesn't work. But even like she said, just even let them, that concept on its own means nothing unless there's a let me part of it. Yeah. Because the other thing she says too is like the let them be who they are and kind of be above them, but then do something about it. So it makes you feel good to be like, oh, well, and she was saying something about her friends going on a trip without her, but they hadn't been hanging out for a while, so why would they invite her? But she was all upset, and then she's like, oh, well, I don't need them anyways. Yeah. And she's like, that's not healthy. So how about let me realize I actually love all these people. I still want to be friends with them. So instead of reaching out and being like, why didn't you invite me? What's wrong? It's like, hey, do you want to grab a cup of coffee or something sometime? Reconnect with them that way. But having that little bit of a feeling better than them moment helped her not spiral into this negative thing that she was going through.
These things shouldn't make you bitter. You don't want life situations to make you bitter, because it's not affecting the person who's made you bitter.
They're not even thinking about it.
That's right, exactly. It's only you. So what is that? Drinking poison and expecting it to, what is it? Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting it to kill the other person.
Yes.
I butchered that quote.
You did, but
thank you.
I understand what you're saying, but it's true. It's also insanity. It's repeating the same thing over and over again. being upset about something for longer than you need to be upset about it
Mm-hmm.
is not healthy for you. And again, it doesn't, the other person's not even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a waste of time. And that seems to be my thing that I really need to work on, is to not reacting right away.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to not let it affect me for longer than it needs to, because that other person's not affected at all.
Yeah.
So calm down.
Yeah.
Live your life. Be the best version of you can be, and just keep doing that, and you're gonna be a lot happier.
And lead by example. Yeah. Yeah. And if you're joyful, people will see that in you, and they're gonna question, like, what is she doing that's making her joyful, right? And so, and that's really all we can do, and we want that for other people, and that's a good thing, that we want other people to be joyful, and we want other people to read good books that help them to grow, and it's kind of the whole point of the podcast, you know?
Yeah.
If we have worried about whether or not people would have judged us for doing it, we never would have done it, so we had to let that go.
Yep. And if they don't like it, let them.
Yeah.
They don't
and
have
if they
to
don't want to watch
it's
it,
okay.
let them, or let them not. But let me go ahead and continue to record the podcast.
Let me keep doing it, because there's going to be lots of people that, and we've already heard of them, that enjoy the podcast.
Yeah.
So we're doing it for you.
Yeah.
Tell your friends.
All three of you. No, I'm just kidding.
All three of you. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite things this week? I didn't even ask you that.
I don't know. No, I'm sure there's something. I'm not really thinking about it.
I don't have any specific ones. This is what I did when I was trying to think of what my favorite thing was this week. I was like, I'm gonna let me look in my Amazon cart and see what I've ordered. I did get a new bed, and it was not a cheap bed, but thing is, my husband and I sleep very differently. So he has a little bit of acid reflux and sleep apnea, so he kind of needs to be elevated. So what's been happening is he's been like not sleeping well, so he'll go out on the couch so that he can kind of sit up. And so I was like, you know what, this is not good for us, so let me go out and get a new bed. So we got one of those Posturepedic type, like I have my own side, he has his own side, which means we actually ended up getting a bigger bed, because it was like two twins. So I am loving that. In the morning, I talked about how I go back in the room and do my reading. Now I can hit a button that says, I think it's lounge or zero gravity, I can't remember. Anyway, it automatically goes into the position I need to be in to sit up and read and drink my coffee. And so my first hour of the morning has now become even more luxurious, and I'm loving that.
Nice.
Yeah, but I'm still paying it off too. So. But
I mean, this is the thing as an adult. A bed is not something that you want to cheap out on.
No, you spend a third of your life in your bed. A third of your life. And then I was saying this to an old guy, one of my, that's how I talk, one of my senior citizens, and he's like, he said, you spend a third of your life in bed? He said, I sleep for like 3 hours and I'm up. I'm like, wow, you are enjoying your life way more than I am.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change it because I love my sleep.
I like my sleep too.
Yeah.
Probably more than I need to, but it's okay.
Yeah.
I will always choose sleep, which is why I want to get up and walk in the morning, and I'm always choosing sleep. Yeah. Eventually, I'll create those habits. I'm working on them.
Yeah.
And working on them in the first place is a good start.
I just figured out what you're learning.
Well,
your hair.
Yeah.
We're there, guys. We're at the final stages of...
because we're not quite perfect yet.
Well, she's never satisfied.
No.
But it's long and it's blonde and look how pretty it is. Yeah.
I never ever thought I would be a blonde on purpose. I'm actually really liking it. I think it's the bright. Well, no, because every time I'm blonde is because I'm putting some kind of bright color over top of it.
Yeah.
It's the only time I ever got to blonde. But I think the bright around my face works.
Yeah.
That's what I keep hearing.
Now we have to start taking bets on how long it's going to stay blonde. I'm going to kill her if she gets rid of the blonde in the next 4 weeks, I'm going to say, because this took at least 4 weeks to get there. So, it's got to stay
the only thing that I could say might be frustrating is, again, it's because I have the extensions that are matching, is the brassiness of my hair versus the extensions. So the upkeep, as much as I have extensions in my hair and of course, it's going to be high maintenance, I get frustrated with high maintenance at the same time. I'm very strange. I understand that. I'm very aware.
neither one of us are
I
high
do
maintenance.
it to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I put extensions in myself, so I'm not paying somebody else to do it. I do it so that I can be low maintenance. I read that somewhere, or somebody said that somewhere, it was a hairdresser. I'm high maintenance, so I can be low maintenance. I'm like, that's me.
Yeah, that's good.
That relates, that's me.
Mm-hmm. I like it. That's why dry shampoo was invented.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have a lot of dry shampoo this morning going on.
Yeah. I like it. It also lightens up your roots if you're blonde, which is nice. Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's it.
So we recommend this. We recommend this book. It's a very good one.
Yeah, that's a keeper.
Honestly, if you can't digest the whole book, I get some people aren't book people.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do like podcasts, which if you're watching this, you probably do, I do suggest to listen to Mel Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
I just love her.
Yeah.
She's maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but she's the way that she, like I said, can break it down to a very easy to digest.
She also narrates. Not every author narrates their own audiobooks, but the nice thing about her narrating her own is that you get her cadence and you get her tone and her stories when she's talking about her own children. It's her experience, her lived experience. So, like, it's funny and it's
it just
like I said,
a little better words coming from her.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And she said, what did she say? She said that. I love this part. Your life can change in one day, they say. Mm-hmm. You know, people are like, oh yeah, just one day can change your life. But she said it might take you 15 years to get to that day. Yeah. So you've got to put the time and the work in. Yeah. And
do the reps.
Do the reps, put the reps in, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's such a good, there's so many. When I was coming here and I was getting ready for it, I was looking up the Google images of quotes from the book. And even if all you did was Google this book and look at the quote images,
there's so many.
They're all
so good.
Keepers. Like put them, write them on a posted card and put them around your apartment or something, because it's great to be reminded daily. And sometimes we need that, especially when we're in the emotion. Which the emotion lasts 90 seconds.
Yeah. So when I wrote it down.
I think it's 90 seconds.
Emotions dissipate after 90 seconds. If you don't act on it, it will go away.
Yeah.
So when you get a rush of emotion, it's actually a chemical thing. This is what she was, again, read the book. She talks about it a lot better than we talk about it. But just let it breathe, basically. Mm-hmm. Our reaction time is so quick, and that's natural. It's okay.
We've all done that. We've reacted and been like, oh, why didn't I just...
But it's natural to do that. So just don't actually outwardly react. Like, let yourself feel it for a second. In 90 seconds, it will dissipate. Yeah. But if you don't let it go, it's, just let it go. Yeah. In 90 seconds, it won't be so bad. But the initial rush of the emotion,
it's like being in the cold plunge tub.
Yeah.
Right? The initial...
This is something we learned.
Yeah, as soon as you get into the cold plunge, like assuming you've just done a sauna, okay?
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to catch your breath and you're going to feel it and it's shocking and it's cold. But once you get, what was I at? Once I got past the 2-minute mark.
I think it was even a minute. Once we got past that minute.
As you do it more and more, the breathing was easy. Like almost to the point where it barely was even catching my breath anymore. But once I get past the 2-minute mark, or like you said, like the minute and a half, it's not hurting anymore. It's not even really that cold anymore. And I now understand why people can stay in there for up to 5 minutes. We got up to 3. We were doing timer.
Yeah, we both did 3. I think next time we go, we'll try to get it to 4.
Yeah,
and just
I may even do the full 5. The
see.
Difference is though, when you only do 2 in the cold plunge, your core temperature doesn't have time to come down. So when you get out, you're not feeling cold. When you go anything beyond the 2-minute mark, I was getting out and I was shivering and I was ready to get back into the sauna part. Yeah. So I understand that now, that difference of like upping your core temperature and bringing it right back down again. Still loving Evolve Spa, still waiting for them to call us.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we still keep going.
Yeah. I think that's it.
That is it, yeah. I hope you like this. If you have specific books that you want us to have in our Lou&Sue book club, let us know.
What's in your collection? What's your top 10?
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be a self-help one.
No.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
We're kind of, Susan was saying she's a little self-help booked out.
I'm overwhelmed. I did the Let Them Theory, I did the 5 Resets, and then I did the Dopamine Nation immediately, like back to back. And the beginning of March, and I'm already at 12 books, I think, read this. So I'm ready for a little bit of maybe some fiction even.
Yeah.
But and I read Full, which is a really great book too if you're looking for it's not a diet book, but just like an advice book on that sort of thing. That's really good too. Yeah. But yeah, that's it for us.
All right. So from us to you.
Thank you so much for watching our podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe, and follow us on our social media at Lou&Sue Podcast on both Instagram and TikTok. See you next week.